Welcome, everyone, to History Gone Wilder, part of Half History Will Travel. I am your host, the Wilder Historian, and after the Battle of Fort Sanders, Longstreet extricates himself from the city of Knoxville, but gets pursued by Union forces. To stop the Union advance, Longstreet will fight a battle within the shadows of Clinch Mountain. During the battles for Chattanooga, including Lookout Mountain and Missionary Ridge, Union Major General Ulysses S. Grant didn't forget about Ambrose Burnside and his isolated command at Knoxville, Tennessee. After pushing the Confederate Army of Tennessee off Missionary Ridge and pursuing that defeated army a short distance, Grant turned his attention to Burnside and his opponent, Confederate Lieutenant General James Longstreet. On the same day that the Battle of Fort Sanders took place, Grant dispatched William T. Sherman with a force of over 30,000 men north to relieve Burnside and defeat Longstreet, or at the very least, push him away from Knoxville. To help relieve the pressure off of Burnside, Grant sent messages to Burnside informing him of the relief column and also sent a messenger who was to get intentionally captured by rebel forces. All the messengers carried the same message, but the one intended for Longstreet was to be written in Grant's own hand. The message would hopefully encourage Longstreet to disengage from Knoxville and save Burnside. Sherman and his force, consisting of the 4th, 11th, and 15th Corps, and one division of the 14th Corps, trudged along the roads leading from Chattanooga to Knoxville. Confederate forces burned supplies and bridges along the route to slow Sherman down, but engineers repaired the infrastructure and pressed on toward the city. On December 4th, an aide-de-camp to Sherman arrived at Burnside's headquarters on Gay Street in Knoxville, informing the partially besieged general that help was within a day's march. As Sherman marched to Burnside, Union forces from the north were threatening Longstreet. Orlando B. Wilcox's command at Cumberland Gap began to move south from Tazewell. To combat this force, Longstreet sent part of Brigadier General Frank Armstrong's cavalry, along with Brigadier General William Grumble Jones's brigade from southwest Virginia to combat the approaching Federals. A sharp fight occurred on December 2nd where the Union won a tactical victory at Walker's Ford. The Confederate cavalry retreated south, but the stubborn stand by the Great Horsemen convinced Major General John G. Foster, Burnside's replacement traveling from Cumberland Gap, that I am at present completely held in check by Longstreet's more numerous and quite aggressive mounted arm. The noose was tightened around Longstreet's neck, with Union forces converging on Knoxville to relieve Burnside. On December 5th, Longstreet left his entrenchments around Knoxville and headed northeast. Rumors spread that they would be joining Robert E. Lee's army once again. However, it would be months before they would see Virginia again. Until then, they would remain in East Tennessee. Blaine's Crossroads was the first stop for Longstreet's corps. There the men rested, and officers got stragglers back in line. Then they kept marching. The freezing temperatures produced ice along the road and cut the feet of those without shoes. Longstreet called a halt at Rogersville, Tennessee. The troops became depressed when they realized they weren't heading back to Virginia, at least not yet. Meanwhile, Sherman and his men made it to Knoxville and Burnside welcomed them into the city. Sherman and Burnside toured the Fort Sanders battlefield, but Sherman was eager to get back to Chattanooga. He believed occupying East Tennessee was a waste of time and resources because of the difficulty in supply in the region. He obtained permission to return to Chattanooga, but left Gordon Granger and his 4th Corps to remain with Burnside to protect the city. Granger informed Burnside that his troops were too tired to chase after Longstreet, so Burnside would use part of the 9th and 23rd Corps, placed under the command of his Chief of Staff John G. Parke, to give chase. Burnside's cavalry under James Shackelford nipped at the heels of Longstreet's column as Parke's infantry marched slowly behind the horsemen. Now that the Federal forces were outside of Knoxville's fortifications, Longstreet went on the attack, reversing course and moving southwest toward Bean Station to engage with the advanced Federal cavalry. On December 14th, Longstreet's cavalry engaged with their Union counterparts. The 4th Kentucky Cavalry Confederate led the way, but the 59th Alabama from Gracie's brigade, which led Longstreet's infantry column, took their place, pushing in the Union horsemen. Gracie formed his battle line north of the road running through Bean Station. As he did so, a Union bullet tore into Gracie's arm, but he remained on the field. Fulton's brigade formed to the south of the road. Heavy musketry stopped Fulton's brigade and Gracie's brigade, but Johnson ordered them forward again. This time they pushed the Union troopers to the west of the road that ran south to the Holston River. Gracie's men made it to the outbuildings of the hotel that formed the nucleus of the town. Kershaw's brigade marched to the northwest to support Gracie. It would be Kershaw's responsibility to outflank the defenders. The 8th and 15th South Carolina pushed the troopers from a hill in their front. It was getting late in the day, and Jenkins' division was arriving on the field, but it was too late for them to engage the enemy. The last action of the battle occurred when the 59th Alabama and the 43rd Alabama advanced on the buildings that made up Bean Station, capturing the hotel and driving the Federal soldiers from the area. Longstreet planned for his cavalry to advance from the south and from the north to trap Shackelford, but neither cavalry force got to the location in time. Shackelford's cavalry retreated toward Rutledge, with Jenkins's division in pursuit. Skirmishing occurred all day on December 15th between Jenkins and Haskell's Union division. The Federal soldiers would fall back west of Rutledge by the time night fell across the landscape. Longstreet became frustrated at his division commanders and their lack of aggression in the latest engagement. McLaws complained of his men having no food and a lack of shoes as the reason his men performed poorly. Exasperated at the inability to land a decisive blow against Parke's Union forces, Longstreet began pulling back up the valley toward Bean Station. Bloody footprints from the shoeless Confederate soldiers marked the way. Then the command moved across the Holston River and settled around the little town of Russellville. In the fight at Bean Station, the Confederacy lost 290 men, over half coming from Gracie's brigade. The Union lost only 115. The pursuit of Longstreet and Longstreet's attacks had been a failure for both sides. Parke didn't catch or destroy Longstreet, and Longstreet was unable to eliminate Parke's cavalry or his infantry. The winter Longstreet spent in East Tennessee would be a cat-and-mouse game, as each side lashed out at the other, but neither one could land a decisive blow.